Hey, what's up? Zach here. And these are my top 5 favorite basketball shoes for the start of the 2023 NBA season and winter 2023. Here we go. And coming in at number 5 is the New Balance Kawaii 2. Now the reason I like the Kawaii 2 so much, it doesn't really have a lot to do with the midsole, it's more the outsole and uppers. It is one of those shoes that is just as good of an outdoor shoe as it is an indoor shoe, and that is a pretty hard line to straddle. The other thing is the shank is so long on these, but it is bottom loaded and serrated. It kind of has those air pockets in between it to allow a lot of flexibility and performance, but also a lot of really good rigid support underneath of your foot. So the uppers are also super containing, really good for an ankle sprainer, but also somebody with flat feet and just somebody looking for the ultimate in power under their foot. So if you're looking for a really rugged shoe to go to battle with, the Kawaii 2 really has everything you're looking for in one package. The only downside I'll say of the Kawaii 2, why it didn't get higher in the list, is because the midsole is not as forgiving as some others. It's not as plush and comfortable. However, there are over-the-counter orthotics and inserts you can put in these, which we'll get to in a little bit. They can make these a much more elite shoe and maybe even put it higher on this list. But speaking of that midsole foam of the Kawaii 2, the number 4 shoe on this list is kind of the exact opposite, and that is the Puma TRC Blaze Court. And if you've watched my deep dive review on the TRC Blaze Court, you'll know I'm a huge fan of Puma Pro Foam Plus. That's the foam that goes all the way through the shoe here. It is super bouncy, elastic EVA. It gives such a good launch, a ton of forgiveness underfoot. It's a super lightweight foam, but just gives ridiculous launch, ridiculous performance, and still really nimble footwork. It also has a pretty stiff shank right here in the arch of the shoe, so it does give the shoe still a little bit more of a snap, just kind of like the Kawaii 2 does, only in a much more nimble package. Now, the one bad part about the TRC Blaze Court is that the outsole is not the most durable out there. It can start to wear down a little bit quicker than some others. However, if you are keeping these indoor, that problem does get a lot less. It's when you take them outdoors that you start to see the issues. However, in terms of a pure performance shoe, a pure comfort shoe, I mean, the Blaze Courts are just out of this world. And coming in at number 3, this shoe kind of combines a lot of things from the Kawaii 2 as well as the TRC Blaze Court, and that is the Anta KT8. And what I love about the KT8, number 1, is the lockdown. Now, I know the uppers are supposed to resemble kind of like fish scales. However, the design is sound. It does lock you into this shoe better than just about anything else out there. It also has a combination of a few different foams that really do give you, number 1, a lot of forgiveness underfoot, but a ton of launch from number 1, static stance, or number 2, when you're trying to fire down the basketball court. It also has a really ergonomic carbon fiber shank from the heel all the way to the midfoot, which really just does give you a tremendous launch whether you're coming down on your heel or you're trying to push off from the forefoot. So no matter where you are in court or where your foot is in space, the shoe is going to give you a ton of performance. The only downside to the KT8, kind of like the Kawaii 2, is that they're not the most plush and forgiving shoes underfoot. They feel a bit more dense under your foot. Now, that can be augmented with an over-the-counter orthotic, and that's what brings me to today's sponsor, which is Powerstep. Now, those of you that have been watching my channel for a while know that Powerstep is my absolute favorite over-the-counter orthotic for athletes and patients with pre-existing foot pain because of the broad arch support they have, the deep heel counter, and just the amount of contact you get with them between the orthotic and your arch. It is simply unmatched, even by some custom orthotics. Now, with Powerstep Pinnacle, you can get the standard version, which is kind of that standard arch, but number 2, you can also get them in the low version or the high arch version. Now, I've found with the lows, those are good for people, number 1, with, a flatter foot, but also someone that wants a little bit less arch support, just something maybe for a midsole replacement, midsole shielding, but wants something with a little bit of snap. Versus on the highs, these are good for patients with, number 1, high arches. However, also people with a normal or a flat foot that just want the most arch support possible. These give more arch support than a lot of custom orthotics that I've seen out there. Now, these are going to take a little bit longer to get used to, the high arched ones. However, they are going to give you just maximum arch support. I just have not seen an arch on an over-the-counter orthotic like I have seen on the highs, and I've actually even put flat-footed patients in the highs, ones that need a ton of pronatory control. So I think kind of the low, standard, or the high really comes down to you, kind of what you would like best on your foot. However, if you do want to pick up a pair of any of these 3 orthotics, I do have a discount code linked in the description below as well as a pinned comment. All right, on with the video. And coming in at number 2 is a shoe that's kind of my personal favorite. They're the ones that I actually have a second pair of here that I like to play basketball when I'm just training for these videos and trying to make myself not look as stupid as I do on camera sometimes when I'm shooting around, and that is the Nike PG6. And to me, the PG6 is Nike's best all-around basketball shoe, number 1 for the price. Number 2, it's just built on a little bit more of a stable last, so the shoe is just a little bit more stable in the forefoot as well as the heel, so you get a little bit better traction just because the shoe's contacting the ground more. It's got a continuous tread pattern with super gripping outsole rubber, and just kind of that lunar base pattern on it just gives really good grip on outdoors or indoor courts. Now, if you look on the inside, it does have a full bed of React foam with a pretty stiff shank, stiffer of a shank than I thought it was going to be underneath of it, given how plush they feel underfoot. And in terms of a shoe for number 1 comfort, but number 2 just raw performance and really good bite on the court, really good launch. To me, this is just kind of the ultimate package of a shoe if you're looking for comfort, but also a ton of confidence when you're going to make really aggressive moves. And before I get to the number 1 shoe, I do want to give a couple honorable mentions. Number 1 is the Nike KD15. Now, I personally really like the KD15. Performance was tremendous. The only thing I don't love about them is that the shank is serrated, and it's also pretty flexible, so I don't see the durability on these being as good as some other shoes out there, especially with the bed of foam that's underneath of it. Number 2 is I have seen in the community people talking about some heel slippage issues. I did not have any of those when I got mine. However, who knows what's happening with them as, you know, later models have come down the road, and it was more than just a handful of people talking about that heel slippage, so it's something I did have to pay attention to. And the second honorable mention was a shoe that I had the most fun playing in, the most creativity with, and that was the Nike Air Del Dawn. Now, these for sure are not for people with really bad pronatory issues. They do have a ton of flexibility into them, and this Fly E system, if you do have a really bad pronation issue or even over supination, that bar can start to hit into your foot. However, if you're more of a neutral foot athlete or just don't mind breaking this in terms of a shoe that can give you the ultimate degrees of freedom, the ultimate court feel, but with a super plush and comfortable fit underneath of it. Like I said, in terms of pronatory and supinatory control, they're not the best out there, and that's why they didn't make this particular list. But speaking of that control, that brings me to the number 1 shoe on this list, and that is the Way of Wade 10. Now, number 1, the Way of Wade 10 has the best lateral as well as medial containment of any shoe I've seen on the market, with the lateral TPU paneling as well as that almost full-length carbon fiber shank under your arch. Now, also because this is a Pebex-based foam directly underfoot and a molded carbon fiber shank, not just a flat piece of carbon fiber, this shoe still gives a lot of comfort underfoot, but also a lot of performance. So the shoe still does forgive a lot of your movements and forgives a lot of issues, kind of lumps and bumps along your foot or maybe little deformities you might have. But it also gives one of the best snapbacks I've seen this year, the best launches off of static stance, as well as when you're kind of bounding down the court going for a layup or a dunk. These shoes are also one of the most forgiving in the outsole. These have the perfect combination of a hard stop type rubber, but also a little more forgiveness so you're not toppling over your foot. So I think with the Way of Wade 10, it combines a lot of the best aspects of a lot of the shoes on this list into one package, and that's why I just thought with these in terms of stability, playability, and even comfort, these were just the best out there by a little bit this year even. But of course, love to know your thoughts. You know, what's been your top shoe for 2022 and the beginning of 2023? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see a deep dive on any of these shoes that I've had on this list, including honorable mentions, I have set up a special playlist up above, and make sure you subscribe down below. Thanks for Powerstep for sponsoring this video. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you in the next one.